He's like the father or grandfather that everybody wanted.
A kind man, a man who listens.
A very humble guy who is always learning.
He's always attracted to trying something new.
Intense but quiet.
If you talk to him for 15 minutes, you learn 2 or 3 new things that you didn't know that you should have known.
Someone immediately that you're drawn to.
He's just a good guy. He's fun to be around.
Very accessible, yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, he always has been.
If you have a problem, he's right there to help you.
My dad, Robert Haas, was born in Brooklyn on April 18th, 1927. He got his start after getting out of college, after getting out of the Navy after World War II, by going to work for his father.
I got involved in the business because my father had a retail store. Actually, the store opened the first day of repeal. As the wholesaler trucks drove in and unloaded the stuff on the street, they could barely get it in the store because there was a long line of people waiting out there to buy it. My father decided to stay a retailer, but he formed an import company in Pennsylvania and bought direct from French suppliers, and he had a buyer who died in the summer of 1953. And I was elected, since I was the French speaker in the family. You could go to the 3-star restaurants in those days in Paris, and you could go in and have a full meal and a bottle of Lafite 45 for $35. I mean, so who could not love that, right? My first purchase was from Domaine Gouge in that spring of April of 1954. We did the tasting in his cellar, and then we were invited to lunch. He said, "Oh, you've come to buy some wine." And I said, "Oui, monsieur." And he said, "Okay, you'll have 2 barrels of Porret and 1 barrel of Lait Saint-Georges and 1 barrel of Vauquois, 1952. And these will be the prices." And I said, "Oui, monsieur." And that was our purchase.
When my grandfather decided that he was ready to retire, my dad realized that what he really wanted to do was work with the producers whose wines he'd been importing, not go back and work retail. So he took all of the contacts that he'd developed through his work and turned them into an importing business.
When I think of Bob, what I think of first is vineyard brands.
When he decided to start his own company, importing wines, he said, "Well, I also want to live in Vermont." So he moved to Vermont, and that's where he ran his U.S. national importing company.
He kind of brought in a lot of small, high-end producers, mostly from Burgundy, but also from the Rhone.
The people he had chosen as the producers in Europe were some of the finest producers in terms of quality. And it was clear that that's what really interested him. It was his interest in wine for everything it means and for its quality.
The family that he became closest to through this work was the Perrin family from Château de Beaucastel in Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
And in 1967, I went down to try and find a supplier, and I met Jacques Perrin at the time. Sometime around 1970, Jacques introduced me to Jean-Pierre, his oldest son. We became quite friendly with Jean-Pierre and his wife, and they visited us in Vermont. We visited them in France.
My dad and Jean-Pierre and François Perrin made dozens of trips to the United States in the 70s and 80s to introduce Americans to Beaucastel, but more generally to Châteauneuf-du-Pape and to the Rhone Valley.
I was visiting California, and Jean-Pierre came with me. One thing that struck him in particular was the fact that there were absolutely no Rhone varieties anywhere. It was Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay. Even Merlot had not reared its ugly head in Napa at that time.
In the mid-70s, you could be excused for thinking that there were like 3 grape varieties in America. If you said to your friends at a dinner party, well, I had a really good bottle of Peak Pool the other night, they wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Sometime in the mid-'80s, and I can't even say why, we said, well, let's think about this more. And so about mid-'80s, we started saying, okay, let's do something together in California. Let's do a Rhone variety vineyard in California. And we started looking for places to go.
There are a lot of French suppliers for whom the idea of visiting a California winery is really hard to fathom. But the Perrins, they're a remarkable family. They've always been really interested in the way that things are done elsewhere. In '85, they put together a partnership and started looking around California. In 1989, they found a property, 120-acre former alfalfa farm and cattle ranch here in the hills west of Paso Robles. It had three things that they were looking for. They were looking for the right kind of climate, it had enough rainfall, and it had high calcium limestone derivative soils that are what the bedrock is in Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
So the property came on the market, and we were contacted, and here it was. But we were also looking for chalky, calcareous clay soils. We then hired a French soils expert to come and test the ground for its pH. And what he did was he went around and he poured vinegar on various spots where it bubbled. Okay, that's chalk. We formed a partnership.
The reason why we are partner with Bob at Tablas Creek and friends, because we are wine lovers.
We decided that we needed to bring in vine material because we couldn't find what we wanted here. There were some varieties that didn't exist, or if they were, it was questionable. We didn't want to found a whole enterprise with an illegal import. So we searched around and found a USDA station in Geneva, New York that would handle our imports.
So it cost us 5 years to bring in our own material, because we started in '89, we got the vines out of quarantine in '92, and it wasn't until '94 that we had enough of these French clones to start getting the vineyard planted. But we had really high quality clones to work with. Second of all, we knew we didn't have viruses. And third, we'd been able to select all of the specific clones that we had and bring in a bunch of things that were really new in California.
Well, the nursery business developed because there was no fresh French material coming in of these varieties. So we thought that we would start a nursery business on the side, and because there would be demand, and indeed there was. But we were just not equipped to handle it. So we managed to lose a fair amount of money in the first few years. But we did lay the base for supplying material to other wineries, because we felt that a rising tide would raise all ships, and we didn't want to keep this just exclusive to ourselves.
Bringing in all of those varietals, not just planting them just for himself and his winery, but putting in a nursery, established that Paso Robles had access to all of this good wood, and the wines were turning out to be rather spectacular.
The fact that we've sold grapevine cuttings to more than 600 different vineyards and wineries around the West Coast, I think has played a really important role in kicking off the whole Rhone Rangers movement.
What we do now is that we have a deal with a nursery in Santa Rosa, and they sell the vines, and we just collect a royalty. And that works pretty well. In another 10 years, we may make back what we lost the first 10.
It's not by accident that he's been able to be successful in 4 different businesses and 3 different tiers of the wine business. It's consistently inspiring for me to work with him.
Everybody, I think, who is here, Jason and Neil, our winemaker, and I, are clear on the direction we want to take, which is one of elegance and grace and tradition and stewardship of the land, and with a view toward the future.
Je ne peux pas faire autrement qu'en français pour te dire toute ma gratitude, pour te dire toute mon amitié, pour te dire finalement que tout ce que nous avons vécu ensemble a été pour moi des moments exceptionnels.
Bob, congratulations on this award from the Rhone Rangers.
Hey, congratulations, Bob.
Bob, congratulations.
Congratulations, Bob. You deserve this honor.
And if you get a lot of money from this, I want you to buy me dinner.